Oh, okay. We're live. Thought I'd run over a cat for a second. All right. So this is the last bit of the March 17th Daily Bread Bible in a Year reading. It's going to be Mark 15 verses 1 through 25, and we're definitely live for sure now. Okay. So carrying on, starting in verse 1, it says, and as soon as it was morning, the chief priests held a consultation with the elders and scribes and the whole council, and they bound Jesus and led him away and delivered him over to Pilate. Check my audio. Yeah, okay, good. We don't know all the details about the night of Jesus' arrest, but we read here that he was in custody of the Jews until the next morning. After a night in the abusive custody of the Jewish elite, Jesus was led to the Roman governor Pontius Pilate. Who was Pontius Pilate? Pilate was the fifth Roman governor of Judea. He was preceded by Valerius Gratus, who had appointed Caiaphas as high priest. Historical records of his life and rule are sparse, and many of the details of his reign are still debated. Okay. Should quit covering up my audio so I can make sure it's still hearing me. Okay. Pilate had many run-ins with the Jews he governed, which eventually led to his removal from office. Why did the Jews take Jesus to Pilate? It seems they wanted the backing of the Romans before they committed a murder that might incite the people. If the Jews had killed Jesus on their own and there had been an uprising, they might have been held responsible by the Roman overseers, or they may have wanted Jesus killed via crucifixion and needed Roman approval. Okay, verses 2 through 5. And Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And he answered him, "You have said so." And the chief priests accused him of many things. And Pilate again asked him, "Have you no answer to make? See how many charges they bring against you?" But Jesus made no further answer, so that Pilate was amazed. Pilate asked Jesus if he was the king of the Jews. This would have been a politically important question because Herod, who ruled with Roman permission, had claimed the same title. If Jesus also claimed the title, it might indicate an attempt at political subversion. Just grabbing some of these here. Dang it. And they just flew everywhere. Oh, goody. Dang it. All right, whatever. Okay. Jesus doesn't answer Pilate directly, but responds with, "You have said so." Some think this was a statement of affirmation. Others take it as a probing question meant to interrogate Pilate, similar, if not identical, to Jesus' statement in John 18:34. John 18:34 reads, Jesus answered, I do that all the time. Did you say this of your own accord, or did others say it to you about me? And he's saying this to Pontius Pilate. And I know Pontius Pilate replies, "Am I a Jew?" The chief priests made sure to pile on plenty of accusations, even though, as we learned earlier, they couldn't even find credible witnesses. To Pilate's amazement, Jesus doesn't respond to the accusations. Accused criminals are usually quick to want to clear their name, but Jesus remains silent. This fulfilled a prophecy about Christ in Isaiah 53. Isaiah 53:7 reads, "He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth, like a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and like a sheep that before its shearers is silent, so he opened not his mouth." Pilate probably knew many of the accusations of the chief priests were bogus, and he was astounded Jesus didn't try to make a defense. Verses 6 through 10. Now at the feast he used to release for them one prisoner for whom they asked. And among the rebels in prison, who had committed murder in the insurrection, there was a man called Barabbas. And the crowd came up and began to ask Pilate to do as he usually did for them. And he answered them, saying, "Do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews?" For he perceived that it was out of envy that the chief priests had delivered him up. Hmm. Hmm. Apparently, there was a custom at Passover that the governor would forgive a prisoner of their crimes and release them from prison. This may not have been dissimilar to governors and presidents handing out pardons around the holidays. It was up to the people who were released. Pilate gives the people a choice. Would you like Jesus or Barabbas? Matthew 27:17. We are told Barabbas was a notorious prisoner. He probably thought they wouldn't ask for the release of a terrible person like Barabbas. It didn't take Pilate long to realize why the chief priests had brought Jesus to him. It wasn't because he had committed the crime. It was because Caiaphas, high priest, and his friends were envious. Caiaphas only held the high priesthood because Pilate allowed him to stay in office upon becoming governor. Pilate evidently knew Caiaphas's character on some level and could derive his motives. Verses 11 through 15. But the chief priest stirred up the crowd to have him release for them Barabbas instead. And Pilate said to them, "Then what shall I do with the man you call the king of the Jews?" And they cried out again, "Crucify him." And Pilate said to them, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Crucify him." So Pilate, wishing to satisfy this crowd, released for them Barabbas, and having scourged Jesus, he delivered him to be crucified. Let me see if I can find my notebook. Oh, I don't know if I can. Darn it. I think it's this one. If I can't find it right away, I'm not going to worry about it. Ow, 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 ow. Whatever influence the chief priests and elders still had, oh, this is it, over the people was apparently enough to convince them to ask, please be it, please be it, oh, please, please, please. Hold on, just a second. Let's see. Where is it? Could have sworn this was it. Oh, man. Give me just a second, guys. I thought I had the words written down. I have it in one of my study notebooks. Uh, Shoot. Doggone it. Bummer. This is not the notebook. Oh well, forget it. Whatever. Whatever influence the chief priests and elders still had over the people was apparently enough to convince them to ask for the release of a hardened criminal instead of a man who had spent his days healing their sick. The crowd asked for the release of Barabbas and for Jesus to be crucified. Pilate had been backed into a corner. Yes, no. Hold on. Oh, I know I'm not hearing Gregory's butt up here. I have news for that old man. He is not coming up here and yelling. Uh, he asked them why. What evil has he done? The mob didn't respond with a coherent answer. I'm still looking for this. I'm praying that I can find this. Oh, please, God, let me find it. Let me find the words. Please, 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 please. Not that one. Uh, the mob didn't respond with a coherent answer. They just kept on shouting. Okay, I know I wrote it in orange ink. Or was it green? Shoot. How often do leaders relent to permit or even support godless things? Not because those supporting the godlessness present a case based on evidence and logic, but because they yell and keep yelling until those in authority, worried about the security of their positions, relent. At this point, Where is it? Shoot. I don't think I'm gonna find it. Doggone it. Here it is. Yeah, it's a notebook that's pretty much empty. Heck yeah, I needed a new notebook anyway. Well, fiddlesticks. All right. Well, that really stinks. At this point, Pilate had at least two confirmations of Jesus' innocence: his own convictions after talking to Jesus, his wife's dream, which could not have been a coincidence, Matthew 27:19. Even so, he didn't want to incite the fears of the Jews for fear of their uproar becoming a stain on his political record, so he relented to the mob. The same thing happens all the time today with political and religious leaders. We need leaders with principle and backbone. Now, that's a nice way to put it. Verses 16 through 20. Let's see. And the soldiers led him away inside the palace, that is, the governor's headquarters, and they called together the whole battalion. Please let me have it written down. And they clothed him in a purple cloak, and twisting together a crown of thorns, they put it on him. And they began to salute him, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they were striking his head with the reed and spitting on him and kneeling down in homage. Darn it. Yes. Yay. Uh, and when they, whoops, I mean that open here and come back over here. Yum, out of the way. And when they had mocked him, they stripped him of the purple cloak and put his own clothes on him. And go. And they led him out to crucify him. All right, so one of the things I was looking for, and I just remembered where it is in my notes that I took from when I went to that conference, which I have the DVDs now from that his imminent return conference that I went to that was in Norman, the weekend of the insurrection thing that happened in Israel, sadly. Um, is it it? Is that it? Anyways, David Ben Gigi told us the significance of this particular Passover. And I've told you all about this before, and I'll make it quick. There are three different types of Passovers. There's one for trees, one for people, and one for kings. The one that Jesus was crucified on, that particular Passover, was for kings. So when these Roman soldiers twisted together this vine of thorn of crowns and made a crown for him and put it on his head and put the purple robe, which represents royalty, on him, and called was pretending to worship him as King of the Jews, hail King of the Jews. This particular Passover, it was required in order for prophecy to be fulfilled that uh, the Messiah would be crowned as king, which they did. They thought they were mocking him, which they were, but they were actually fulfilling prophecy. Just like Balaam, when, he was called to, that king called him to speak curses over Israel, but he actually didn't speak curses. He spoke blessings instead, kind of backfired on him. Well, when they were doing this to Jesus, they were actually fulfilling one of the prophecies by that had to be fulfilled as far as him being crowned king on this particular Passover. And one step further is the crown of thorns that was put on his brow. The first Adam was cursed with thorns and thistles. Remember, that was his punishment for bringing in sin and death, was he would have to work the ground by the sweat of his brow and he, with the thorns and the thistles, right? And the last Adam, which is our Messiah, wore the thorns on his brow, and of course he bled, right? But he's the last Adam, meaning he fulfilled the curses. They were all ended because he fulfilled all that needed to be fulfilled in order for the law to be fulfilled and sin debt to be paid and so forth. That was the significance of them putting that thorny crown on Jesus' head. Plus, it also in the Old Testament, it testified that the Messiah would be punctured 7 times, 2 feet, 2 hands, his side, his back, and his head, where they put the crowns on him, the crown of thorns on him. So that's the 7 puncture wounds that the Messiah would receive. No broken bones, right? That's why when they nailed his feet, it went through the side of his heel, so it wouldn't break a bone. So his heels were actually on the either side of the wood. His wasn't 1 foot on top of the other and a nail going straight down the middle of his foot like they always show in the movies. No, it's through the side. They actually found a heel bone from the time when Jesus walked the earth with a nail going through it through the side. This is how they nailed the feet to the crosses, was through the side, and that's how Jesus was nailed, so that way and no bone was broken. And the hand, if you look at your hand and at the base of your hand you've got those little wrinkles just before your wrist, that's considered part of your hand, and that's where you have those 2 bones that are separate. There's a I forgot what the name of the nerve is, but there's a space there that they could drive a nail. It would not break any bones in your hand or your wrist, but it's still part of your hand, and it would also keep you from ripping your hand off. Because if they drove it through the middle of his palm, for one, it'd break a bone, and two, the weight of his body would have just ripped his hands right through those nails. He just ripped it right in half. But at the base where they do it, there's also that nerve, and the Romans had perfected this by the time Jesus came around, and that nail in his wrist was either right on that nerve or right beside it. So whenever he would push with his feet and pull up with his hands so that he could inhale to speak or exhale to whatever it was he had to do when he pushed up, he either exhaled or inhaled. I can never remember which it is. Whatever it was, he was either pushing on that nerve or pushing against that nerve. So it was just like even more pain, but minimal blood loss. They had perfected the minimal blood loss on that as well. But just a little nuggets for you to know about that. So there we go. So they let him out to crucify him. Jesus was turned over to the Roman soldiers, and when the whole battalion had been assembled, they mocked and beat him. That's also why Jesus had already laid down his life. He'd already, into your hands I commit my spirit. It is finished, because they were getting ready to break the legs of the other 2 guys, because they needed them to hurry up and die. Crucifixion was not a way to kill them, it was a way to torture them. They usually would eventually come up and either pierce them with a spear, or they would break their legs so that they would suffocate to death, because you can't push up to breathe if you have broken legs. So Jesus was turned over to the soldiers, and when the whole battalion had been assembled, they mocked and beat him. The Jews and Herod didn't want Jesus to be their king. They wanted to be in charge. The Romans didn't want Jesus to be their king. They wanted to be in charge. Oh, it's hit twice. Oh, right. No, it's not. Okay. So the Jews and Herod and the Romans, none of them wanted Jesus to be their king. They wanted to be in charge. The Jews and Herod played judge and condemned Jesus. The Romans played judge and condemned Jesus. Whenever men try to fill the role of judge and king, there will be corruption. The kingdom of heaven has the only flawless judge and king. The application: are all man made government systems, executive and judicial, destined for corruption and failure? Please be the words. Is history intended to teach us that there is only one king and one kingdom on which we can place our confidence? God is the only incorruptible judge and king. They dressed Jesus up like a king and mocked him. Little did they know he would outlast Herod. He would outlast Pilate. He would outlast Caesar. He would outlast the Roman Empire. Let's see. Oh, I have to play it. Oh crud. All right, never mind. I'll just bring it up later. I have Judah Smith did a teaching on Jesus Loves Barabbas that's just so powerful, and I just wanted to read it to you, but I can't find my words, so never mind. I've played that video for you before. Um, God is the only incorruptible judge and king. They dressed Jesus up like a king and mocked him. Okay, he would outlast the Roman Empire. Jesus' kingdom is still present and active in the modern world, while the kingdoms that mock Jesus only exist in history books. Verses 21 through 23. What are you doing in my books, boy? And they compelled a passerby, Simon of Cyrene, who was coming in from the country, the father of Alexander and Rufus, to carry his cross. And they brought him to the place called Golgotha, which means place of a skull. And they offered him wine mixed with myrrh. But he did not take it the first time. He did not take it the first time because it was not time. Cyrene was a city of North Africa. Simon was probably in Jerusalem for the Passover celebration. Remember, he told his disciples, I will not drink of the fruit of this vine again until I drink it anew in the kingdom. So he just, nope, nope, I don't want this wine. Nope. Simon was probably in Jerusalem for the Passover celebration. You can imagine the pictures of crosses you've seen in crucifixions or history books, and now how heavy they must have been. Well, the whole cross probably weighed over 300 pounds. The crossbeam, which many of the condemned were made to carry, was like 100 pounds. This may not have been an impossible burden for Jesus on a healthy day, but after the sleepless night, scourging, and other abuses, it would have felt like 1,000 pounds. Plus, he carried the whole cross, not just the crossbeam. There's some discussion about the wine and myrrh, or gall, offered to Jesus, but most believe the myrrh was a bitter additive to the wine, which was offered as a slight painkiller. Now, verses 24 through 26. Okay, well, yeah, we're going to do it. And they crucified him and divided his garments among them, casting lots for them. He decided to decide what each should take. And it was the third hour when they crucified him. And the inscription of the charge against him read, the King of the Jews. Third hour equals 9 a.m. If there was ever a summary so abbreviated as to not capture the full emotion of a situation, it would be they crucified him. Mark shares none of the horror of having nails driven through your hands and being lifted up in the air, pinned to a piece of wood. A first century audience probably didn't need any explanation on crucifixion. They were probably more familiar with the process than they wanted to be. The soldiers who crucified Jesus cast lots for his clothing. It was not uncommon for prisoners to be crucified naked. No doubt this would have added to the shame of the whole ordeal. Did I close that already? I sure did. Doggone it. Casting lots is comparable, not comparable, is comparable to drawing straws, although it was sometimes guided by divine influence. Looks like Nana's going candy shopping tomorrow. Well, stupid kids of mine, I said, come get these stupid candy baskets because I'll eat the candy. Eh. Okay, yeah. An additional insult, a sign reading King of the Jews was placed above Jesus' head. Well, that's where we're stopping because the next one will be for March 18th. So this is about, yeah, about the same time it was the last one. So I'm going to go ahead and end this. I'm going to find that video, Jesus loves Barabbas. I'm going to read the transcript to you because it's very powerful. Because I can't ever get the stupid videos to work, so I'll just read the transcript. But I'll try to make it sound interesting because I'll have to put my years of acting skills from drama class in high school to work. So it won't be boring. All right. Shalom for now. I'm going to get another one going, get another one knocked out. So I shall return.